And welcome to the Relationship Restaurant. This is our 18th podcast, which in itself is very exciting that we've had this many wonderful things to share.
We are Poppy and Geoff Spencer. We are your hosts for the Relationship Restaurant, where we serve up all kinds of heart-healthy communication tips and secrets and insights for you to take home and implement into your daily relationships, whether it's at home and work.
And one of the things that Poppy and I just so love, and many of our travels, we attended a session with a group not too long ago, and we can meet some fascinating people that are doing some wonderful things. I know Poppy and I often both look at each other when we're having these kind of conversations, and we say, wow, this person is doing some really great work. We'd be a wonderful guest to have on our radio show.
So we are just coming off the Thanksgiving weekend. We had a great time. We hope you did too. And as we gear up for the holidays, everybody says this can be a really stressful time. So one of the things that I
know we're both just trying to recover from Thanksgiving, I think, right?
Right. And the holiday shopping is crazy. So we've brought our very special guest and expert to tell us how to alleviate some of that stress. And not only does our guest talk to how we can physically and emotionally and mentally alleviate some of that stress, but she talks about how to offer special assessments and treatments for those that have special needs. So our guest today is Cheryl Albright, and she's a delightful person who is an occupational therapist by trade and offers a very unique approach to yoga. So welcome, Cheryl Albright.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for having me.
Well, it is our pleasure. Again, as I was saying as we came in, it's always fun to meet people with a wonderful, wonderful background and doing some great things, especially with children. You know, Poppy and I always, as parents of 5 children, we always want to see people that are doing special things to find unique ways to help children. I know you have with your soul-to-soul yoga practice.
Yes, thank you. It started with taking a course for yoga for the special child and just kind of branched from there.
So tell us, how did you get involved as an occupational therapist? And I certainly have a good understanding of that as an art therapist. So I know about how that is such a passion, at least for me. I'm sure your field too, you love working with people and no matter what you do. So how did you get in touch with doing yoga?
Well, I have an older brother with autism and had an aunt with Down syndrome, so I kind of knew I would be a therapist of some sort. And then, funny enough, my accountant says, go take a class because you need a tax write-off. And I found a week-long in Sarasota, Florida. It sounded like a really good idea, being from upstate New York. And it happened to be yoga for the special child. The unique thing about that program is they really focused on, you've got to feel it for yourself before you can really pass it on to somebody else. And so the teachers that I have are absolutely amazing. And within a week, I felt so much different. I could bring it back to the school that I was working for and started to see amazing changes in kids. And it was a special needs school, so they had individuals up until the age of 21. And so everybody seemed to be benefiting from this. I was like, well, there's got to be something to this. And I kept going back for more training, and I traveled around the country. I got to do traveling therapy, like traveling nursing, and I tried it in different settings and hospitals and psychiatric inpatient facilities, and everybody seemed to do really well with this. And I thought, okay, this is a need that can go across so many different diagnoses and disabilities that it just seemed to be the thing that was making people change. And so I came to Sarasota, Florida, and opened up my own practice.
I think it's incredible here. And I know you've done a lot of events and offered wonderful programs for people. So how are you different from my normal yoga teacher that I might go to?
The yoga teachers, the training that's involved is they have it broken down into hours, and 200 hours is about a month of training. I think what kind of stands me apart and some of the others in the community is the therapy background, and having had taken gross anatomy and physiology and kinesiology and kind of understanding that side, and we tend to be a little bit more analytical than the yoga teachers.
Right.
I mean, it's kind of like my friends that do this, some of them are accountants. We tend to have a very, not needing a protocol per se, but like just have a different way of kind of going about it and learning how to break down. So you want somebody to go into like downward dog, but what do they got to be able to do first? And I hear it a lot in the community. Oh, I can't get down off the floor, or my kid can't sit still long enough, or and it's really meeting people where they're at. And sometimes the traditional studio can be kind of overwhelming if you don't know. There's kind of a little culture within it,
Cheryl, I can speak to that because I know Poppy has done many of these events, and one time I went along with her and another. I think a sister-in-law to a session, and I felt completely like a duck out of water. There was obviously protocols and methodologies, and I was one of those guys who was completely lost and trying to figure it out.
But a really good athlete, so it was sort of like counterintuitive.
Yeah, I had to kind of go to my own mind of other things I've done in other athletic endeavors and try to just switch my mind to that and do those things.
But nobody gave him the special attention or said anything like, oh, that's okay, you can modify, or great adaptation that you just did. Nobody commented on that. So Geoff sort of remained a duck out of water.
Yeah, and I just sort of just did what I felt right to me. And it was kind of it's challenging if you don't know the protocol.
Yeah, it's an interesting kind of subculture. They start speaking sometimes in Sanskrit and things like that. And you're like, they said, what am I supposed to do with my body? So some of that's included in what I do as well, is that it's a recreational activity, that we're teaching, and a coping skill, and hopefully a lifelong one. You have to come in, you have to take off your shoes, you have to sign in, you have to sit quietly. And some of our folks, they wouldn't know because they've never been. And so it's really nice to go out to group homes and things and really start training that piece so that maybe we can get them out in the community. And my goal would be that they can pick whatever studio they want once they kind of understand some of the language being used, and hopefully there's some teachers open out there that'll... Right.
So tell us about your work with children with special needs, adult with special needs, elderly who are in adult facilities, adult care facilities, right?
Yep.
How would you adapt, for instance, for somebody that's in an adult daycare or an adult facility?
Depends on what their need is. Like, for example, when I go into United Cerebral Palsy, most of those folks require an individual session because they're either in a wheelchair or they need a lot of hands-on kind of assistance to be able to make it accessible for them. And so it doesn't look as like your traditional class. There's 8 different limbs to a yoga practice. You can pick one of them and make it accessible to them. And my teacher, Sonia Samar, always says that, the breath is the key and the door.
I love that.
So even if you can't physically move into some of that, we can work on moving with the breath. Or,
yes.
A lot of breath work.
Well, I like that. The key and the door. There's an answer.
Right. I know that when I first went to group meditation about 15 years ago, I was definitely a novice at this. And there were other attendees that had been inquiring how long I had been meditating. And I was like, wow, this was my first session. And there was kind of a little bit of a shame kind of a thing going on. They sort of like demeaned you like, oh, well, I've been meditating for 25 years. And it's like, oh, so I felt less than. My self-worth just took a hit and I felt ashamed. And I know that some people have said that in yoga classes too, where it takes a very intuitive and observant and compassionate instructor to be able to be inclusive and to encourage every member that they're working with to feel good. I mean, ultimately, you want everyone to feel good. And I know you do that. I've seen you in work with other people. For our listeners out there, Cheryl is definitely a people person. Her compassion comes through on her very first hello. And so we can absolutely attest to that. So you said you're having a spring event coming up and you'd love to hopefully attain some corporate sponsorship for it.
Yeah, so there's a lot of people doing great things in our community with our folks with developmental disabilities, and none of them seem to know one another, which is kind of frustrating. For example, there's adapted scuba diving, and there's people that do triathlons with our folks, and nobody seems to know one another. And so I got a preliminary okay for my friends over at the Haven, and I'd really like to see some kind of beyond, like schools do kind of a resource fair, but kind of going beyond and into like more the social and the recreational pieces that are going on in the community, and maybe having some of the folks over at the Haven run some, kind of easy carnival games and just make it a big, fun family afternoon. Date to be determined, but hopefully March before it gets too hot around here. But yeah, we're looking for all levels of corporate sponsorships, anything from sponsoring a group home to be able to attend all the way on up to the naming rights of the actual carnival. So
that would be awesome.
We are looking for some corporate sponsors, and I can get more information to your listeners. That's not a problem. We've got different co-marketing type packages that can go on for the entire year. So yeah, it's really exciting.
So tell us about, you said you do training in schools or special organizations. Tell us what that looks like.
So I'm not trained to teach yoga for the special child. I've got people my teachers do that, and there's people all over the world that do that. When I come in, the importance of using certain aspects of yoga throughout their day that could flow easily into their routine, or I just did a big talk with the Family Network on Disabilities on kind of what they call sensory regulation, or the ability to remain calm. And yoga was invented thousands of years ago,
right,
for people to sit for a prolonged period of time with one single focus. And it's like, what are we asking our kids to do all day long? We have to sit in one position with prolonged focus, and how this can just enhance their educational experiences. And I have one child I'm working with now, and her mom couldn't find anything. She's driving down from St. Pete, and she told me right before the holiday, she had a horrible time with what they call self-injurious behaviors. So she would bang her head when she got frustrated, and she hasn't gotten a phone call from school that she needed to come get her because she banged her head too hard, or she's having these episodes. That's amazing, and that's just one session a week. So imagine the possibilities there.
Right. And just to capitalize on that, anybody that's out there, the littlest amount of stress that you might experience on any given day and the amount of distraction that we have externally in our lives, we can all use some yoga. Is there a way that we can put into practice something of our own without, if we live out of state and we can't reach you?
Yeah, so I can do sessions via Zoom.
Okay.
The only qualification...
Zoom is one of these...
Zoom is like Skype.
Yeah.
Right, like Skype, right.
And so, but the person has to be an active participant. They can't require a whole lot of physical assistance. But if it was just somebody that wanted tips on, I'd go straight to the breath.
Right.
I go straight and look at what is your breathing. And that can be done in the car. I don't recommend some of the premeditative stuff, but just you're at a stoplight, check in and see what your breathing's doing. Are you breathing from your diaphragm? Are you anxious just being in the car? Or do you have 5 million things racing around in your head? Oh, I got to get to the kids in the store and and it's the holidays.
Right.
So, join the traffic and the shopping and the stress of all of that.
I understand the breathing from the diaphragm thing. Poppy and I do a lot of singing. I've done a lot more over the years, and you realize how important that is for breath control and air control, to have that great diaphragm control, to get those long notes, those big long notes you got to hold sometimes.
Right. And if you're not used to it, it does take a certain amount of focus just to practice on your breath, and not to get upset or feel ashamed or disappointed if many, many, many thoughts come into your head as you're trying to focus on your breath. It happens to everybody, right?
It's funny. Something just popped into my head. This speaking of trailers, we have this big new Star Wars film coming out in December. And you remember the opening line is of this trailer where he says, "Breathe. Just breathe." Yeah. That's the opening line of it, training the Last Jedi.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's probably where I would start pranayama or the breathing practices of yoga are one of the 8 limbs, and that would be the first place I would start.
What did you just say? You just said the 8 limbs. Is that what you just said?
Yeah, there's 8 different, they call it 8 different limbs of yoga. When most people think yoga, they think the physical postures. They think downward facing dog, or you're in a tree, or you're doing, you're contorting your body into some kind of pretzel, but that's not really all of it. That's just one piece of it.
Okay.
Tell our listeners just real quick, if you can, an overview of the 8 limbs.
Yeah, because we don't know. I don't know what that is.
So the physical postures being one of them. There's chanting is another piece of it. So singing, the breathing practices, the golden rule, do unto others as you do unto yourself. Karma yoga, so give an act in service. So if you're always serving, or come from a place of service, that will bring you some peace. And that's kind of how I try to run my business. It's just, we're here to serve other people. I had a student last week, and she said, I like how you call all of your people friends. They're not patients, they're not clients. You walk in, you say, hi, friends, and let's go. And that's how we should all do. I mean, all my folks are different. And some of the other aspects kind of go into spirituality as far as like enlightenment and that kind of piece of it, if that's what you want to get out of it. But the other pieces are just, like I just said, the pieces of the class. Like when I teach an adult class, I usually have 5 different things going at the same time. So we always start with singing. And if you've never talked to a music therapist, I love them. They're amazing. And they say it stimulates the entire brain at once.
Right.
Why not start with some singing to get warmed up?
This is, Cheryl, another thing that while I am by no means a taught or licensed music therapist, I have done a lot of casual musical therapy things with singing groups that I've been a part of and on my own to senior centers, people with dementia and others. And I've personally witnessed singing to someone who's lost their ability to speak and communicate. And you can reach a portion of their brain through music to get them singing along, even though they can't have a conversation with you.
Sure, absolutely. Why not start a class that way?
So what would you offer if you could give one piece of advice for the individual that has never done yoga or is just really unfamiliar with it and maybe even wanted to try something at home? What would you start with?
I exercise extreme caution with starting with just a video. And the reason is you tend to want to do what you see.
Right.
And so your physical body might not be able to do what that instructor is doing.
I guarantee mine wouldn't.
Right? So try to follow along, but just exercise some caution and know that you're probably not going to be doing what the person on the television is doing. And just what anybody else would do some research. Learn kind of the lingo to not be so overwhelmed when you do go into a space. I know a lot of people tell me, well, I can't get down on the floor. Okay, so then ask them to have a chair for you.
Right.
It's that simple. They should be able to maybe work up to being able to get down on the floor, but they should be able to do some things in a seated position that would help enhance your practice. And sometimes we got to start there. I know with the kids, I like to get them down on the floor. Even if they're in a wheelchair, I like to get them down on the floor right away. But for some of our adults that are kind of nervous about falling or maybe have some other neurological stuff going on, getting down to the floor is kind of a scary thing. So to not worry about that, a good place will have chairs available.
Okay.
Right. One of the things that I did as a daily practice for almost 6 months was doing Patanjali's yoga, which is really chair sitting breathing. And I did it every day for about 20 minutes. It was just focusing on the breath. And wow, life altered a condition I had, just, a female condition where I was able to use that breath work to really heal my body in ways that medically my doctors said wouldn't be possible. So I'm definitely sold on any kind of yoga breathing. Sure, I have aches and pains in certain areas of my physical body, but the breathing can do wonders. So people can start with breath, right? When
I first started, and I haven't been a yogi all that long, so I kind of understand the stigma you spoke to earlier. And
right.
I mean, I took my initial training in 2009. There's people that have been teaching for 20, 30, 40 years. what I will say is that I was kind of a sick 20-something-year-old. I had physically, destroyed my body, and it was telling me, but it took a 2x4 to wake up to the fact that some of the stuff could be reversed. And doctors had given me a host of prescription meds for allergies and asthma and all sorts of kind of breathing type disorders. And within 6 months of starting a practice, I was off of them altogether.
Right.
Including
Exactly.
the steroids.
Exactly. And so I just think it's so important for people to know that. And so what would you suggest for somebody over the holidays? Is there a breathing position that you recommend that you would say if somebody could practice this even 5 minutes every day, either morning or evening, is there something that you would suggest?
Yeah, I teach everybody kind of in my demonstrations when I do live talks too, is the alternate nostril breathing. It sounds complicated and it doesn't really have to be. There's usually a kind of a hand position with it, but literally you just block one nostril, breathe in and out, switch to the other one, block the other nostril, breathe in and out.
So it's called alternate nostril breathing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It's supposed to calm both hemispheres of the brain.
Love it.
And in turn, calm the nervous system. So you can do that in a car. You can do that before you go in and deal with the holiday shopping. It doesn't have to be for 5 minutes. It could be for one.
As relationship experts, we always talk about how can we communicate easily and successfully and productively with either our spouse,
especially under a stressful topic of some sort.
Right. Any conflict. Certainly. And next week we'll be talking about money on the podcast.
That's a stressful topic.
So this would be a great way to tie that in and to do a breathing meditation, even if it's for 2 minutes before you approach those difficult confrontational encounters, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's one of the first ones I try to teach the kids so that they can use in school because it's free. Doesn't require any equipment or anything from the parent, but also encourage the parents to do it with them so that they're both equally as calm. And money, holidays, there's always something. There's always going to be something.
With the holidays and the end of the year coming up, can you offer anything special for people that either live here in the Gulf Coast of Florida or could find you online with a Zoom? I mean, I know there'll be a lot of kids on winter break,
right.
Before the new year. Is there some way they could find you?
So Thursday afternoons, I actually work out of Children's Therapy Works, which is local to Sarasota. I do free consultations. So I understand that not yoga isn't, I would love to say yoga is for everybody, but there are some people that just aren't going to gravitate toward it. So I like to meet people first and meet the families, meet the child, if it's in a kid situation or if it's an adult with a developmental disability. Just kind of meet the family and this is my process. This is what we're going to be doing. And kind of explain and also see if maybe they would benefit from a group class. Maybe they do need something a little bit less intense than a one-on-one. So yeah, I offer consultations. I'll be around. We're not traveling over the holidays, so if people wanted to come, I've got people driving down from St. Pete and far south part of Sarasota County, so people are...
They find you everywhere. And for those that live outside of the area...
What's your website?
It's www.soul2soulyoga.srq.com.
So it's SOULTOSOUL yoga, YOGA, SRQ.com, which is our airport code that many people here in Sarasota use. So for those that are listening from out of state, St. Pete is about an hour away. But you also alluded to before that you could do a Zoom session maybe. So if you live out of town and you want to have a quick pick-me-up or have something for you and your family to do after the holidays before the new year as they're sitting around and making goals, maybe make yoga one of your goals.
Do you have a social media presence, Facebook, other things?
Oh, yeah. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Same thing if you just look up Soul to Soul Yoga.
Okay.
I forget. I think Instagram has the SRQ, but the rest of them, I think, are just straight Soul to Soul Yoga.
Okay.
And yeah, I try to stay on top of that the best that I can.
Well, I think it's great. So if you had one mantra that you want to leave with everybody today, what would it be?
Well, usually at the end of my adult classes, there's saying in Sanskrit that's Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu, and it just means may the entire creation be filled with peace, love, light, and joy. And so I think that's a great one for the holidays.
That's beautiful. And say it again more slowly.
Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. And I don't do it much justice, but Donna Delory does a great version of it if you wanted to hear somebody singing it.
Oh, that sounds great. So to all our listeners out there, we thank you, Cheryl Albright, for being with us, Soul to Soul Yoga, SRQ. And we certainly learned some things. I'm going to do that right away, especially before Santa
I'm going to go
comes.
do my downward dog because that's like the only thing I know.
Yeah. But I'm going to do the breathing, because the breathing you can do sitting in a chair if you want. You don't have to get down on the downward dog. And we thank you so much, Cheryl, for being with us. And as you said, you can find her, Soul to Soul Yoga, SRQ. And it's Cheryl Albright. We thank you so much for sharing your insights and secrets with us today.
And have a great rest of the holiday season. And we look forward to seeing you again soon at some event.
Oh, yes, will do. Thank you so much. Have a great holiday.
All right. And mantra for those. What is it again in English?
Oh, so may the entire creation be filled with peace, joy, love, and light.
And on that wonderful note, we'll end this episode of The Relationship Restaurant. Thank you all, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.